Good evening and welcome to the Town Board of the Town of Austin Work Session and Town Hall Meeting for Thursday, November 5th, 2020. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So how is everyone post-election day 2020? I want to give a huge shout out to all of our poll workers who managed huge crowds. Over 8,000 voted early in Ossining for early voting, and then much smaller crowds on election day proper. We got lots of compliments about how smoothly everything ran. And for the first time where you could vote anywhere in the county for early voting, I think we can only deem it a huge success. Also, shout out to our town clerk's office who fielded lots of calls and door knocks on Tuesday, because no matter how many times we mentioned our offices would be closed, we had lots of people stop by or otherwise call with inquiries. Madam Clerk, thanks for holding down the fort yet again. Meanwhile, I believe the absentee ballots in New York State will not even start to be counted until tomorrow. Is that correct, Councilman Meyer? Starting tomorrow?
The earliest anything will be counted is tomorrow, yeah.
Right.
And it depends on the race, whether or not they actually start tomorrow.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. So we know there are still some elections that are holding out, declaring a winner. Luckily, congratulations are in order for our newly elected Village of Austin Mayor Rika Levin, Trustee Dana White, as well as incumbent Trustee Manuel Quesada, who was reelected. We also elected Jeff Gasparo to the town bench in Ossining. Congratulations, Jeff. Additionally, Ossining resident Michelle Schauer was reelected to the family court bench, and our own Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff will continue to represent us in Albany for another 2-year term. Thank you, one and all. Congratulations also go out to Mondaire Jones, who won resoundingly in the 17th Congressional District. I think that's the right number, and will be representing us in Washington starting in January. We cannot wait to get to know you better, Mondaire, and to work with you for the good of our communities here in Westchester County. It is difficult to believe Halloween was only 6 days ago, but even though it feels like ages ago, I still want to be sure to say a special thank you to everyone who helped make Halloween a safe and fun holiday this year. Special shout out to the Ossining and Briarcliff Recreation Departments and the Ossining Police Department for all their creative solutions and programs. I love getting to see all the decorations up around town and the pictures. It truly is a sign of our sense of community here in our very own Ossining. Speaking of holidays, each year, the Saturday following Thanksgiving is recognized as Small Business Saturday. Yes, it's true. Thanksgiving is just a few short weeks away. Oh boy. Small Business Saturday is a reminder for residents to support the local businesses we all love. This has been a particularly difficult year for our business owners, and the chilly weather often ushers in a slower season. So before you buy something off Amazon or a big box store, please consider taking a look right here in our own backyard at what is available in Ossining and Briarcliff from our local businesses. Here in the town, we have recognized November 28th, 2020 as Small Business Saturday, as a symbol to all that we encourage our residents to seek out and support our local businesses on this day and throughout the year. We will be sending this proclamation to the county and reminding you at each and every board meeting in November of the importance of shopping small. The Ossining Community Equity Task Force has finalized our equity survey, which has been out in various public forums for a little over a week now and is open to all town of Ossining residents until November 13th, and we encourage everybody to please participate. All residents, including those in the villages of Ossining and Briarcliff, are encouraged to complete the survey. The results will be used to direct the task force's goals and actions. Your input is crucial to getting an accurate understanding of our community's perspective. The link to the survey was shared out in my Friday supervisor's update. and will be available in this week's update as well as on our Town of Ossining website. And if you don't get the update, you can easily sign up on our website or by emailing me directly and asking me to be added. My email address is dlevenberg@townofossining.com. You can also email me to request hard copies for yourself or for distribution through a business or organization. Please feel free to share it widely with your Ossining and Briarcliff circles. We are going to continue sharing the survey through our Facebook and Instagram accounts as well until the survey closes. Also, I just got off a really great training with Westchester County Commission on Human Rights on racism and allyship, and hopefully I'll have an opportunity to talk to some other people in the task force to learn what their perceptions and learning was coming out of that event. Save the date. Thursday, November 19th will be the first public engagement session for the town's comprehensive plan. Beginning at 7 p.m. via Zoom, this facilitated workshop will ask Ossining residents a few questions such as, why do you love living here? What do you wish was different? What does a sustainable community look like to you? Your responses to these questions and more will help us lay the groundwork for this important planning effort that will continue through 2020 and into 2021. You can sign up for updates on the comprehensive plan at our website by visiting townofossining.com/cms/comprehensive-plan-2020. Before I close out my announcements, I want to take a moment to talk about our collective health, including mental health. I know a lot of people felt very anxious in the days leading up to Election Day, not to mention these past few days after Tuesday. I think Councilman Meyer, you're among those people. This anxiety is, of course, on top of the fear and anxiety we've been managing since March with regard to the safety of our families and friends. All New Yorkers are eligible for free mental health services through the COVID-19 Emotional Support Hotline at 1-844-863-9314. Additionally, the open enrollment period for the New York State of Health began this past Sunday. If you do not have health insurance, make 2021 the year you get coverage. View health plan options online at nystateofhealth.ny.gov or call New York State of Health at 855-355-5557 for assistance. One of the scariest pieces of news this week is that the United States hit an all-time high of daily COVID cases Wednesday of this week. Thanks to our collective due diligence, we are grateful to see that these numbers have not quite hit us here in New York, but we need to remain cautious. One of these tools has been the travel advisory, which was updated this past week by Governor Cuomo. Essential workers are still exempt from the travel advisory, as are travelers from New York, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, but those are the only states that are exempt. The new guidelines define travelers in two distinct groups based on whether you were outside of New York for either more or less than 24 hours. Travelers who are here in another state for more than 24 hours must obtain a test within 3 days of departure from that state. Upon arrival to New York, the traveler must quarantine. And on the 4th day after returning, the traveler must obtain another COVID test. If both tests come back negative, they may exit quarantine early. The second portion of the travel advisory relates to travelers who are in another state for fewer than 24 hours. These travelers do not need a test prior to departure from the other state and do not need to quarantine upon arrival in New York. However, they must fill out the traveler form upon entry into New York State and take a COVID diagnostic test 4 days after their arrival in New York State. These new guidelines are an effort on the part of the state to reduce the time travelers are required to quarantine, especially in light of upcoming holidays. I encourage anyone who is considering traveling to review the full travel advisory on the New York State website. Testing is readily available locally throughout our area, including at the Open Door Medical Center and the drive-through CVS and Shellmark Shopping Center. As a reminder, COVID tests are free for all New Yorkers. That is it for my announcements. And do any of my board colleagues have any other announcements? All right. So with that, we are going to kick off our work session this evening with a departmental report from Town Clerk Sue Donnelly. Sue is fresh off of her first general election, and boy, was it an election. Sue, we're looking forward to hearing how Election Day went for your team and everything else you've been working on.
Okay, thank you very much. The town clerk is responsible for all vital statistics in the town of Ossining, including the village of Ossining, and for the village of Briarcliff Manor for marriages. It's been a very challenging years for those who have been unfortunately passed away from coronavirus and the funeral homes being overwhelmed. Working hand in hand, we worked tirelessly, coming in on weekends in order to give those who passed the respect they deserved and the comfort of their families, and for the funeral homes. Coronavirus interrupted many of our lives, one group in particular being those who planned their marriages, only to have them shut down. Many communities, including the city of New York, made it difficult to obtain a marriage license. When we went into lockdown, a software house we were investigating offered us a form to use during the pandemic. We, of course, immediately selected marriage license. Previously, we had taken the information over the counter, and the back and forth was not only inappropriate for an open office, but it was crazy. We worked with our salesperson and developed our first form. After the form was completed online and approved, after each form was completed online and approved back and forth via email, we would car hop the service, out to the cars for signatures, and the happy couple drove away with a valid marriage license. Our reputation for caring has spread far and wide, and we've issued marriage licenses for many from the New York City, all boroughs, and for those coming to New York to get married, and locals who want to get married, with the majority willing to celebrate their actual wedding on their first anniversaries. We have used executive order to Zoom licenses as well as wedding ceremonies when people found themselves in quarantine. We make sure that all emergency orders are sent to the papers and posted as needed, working with our local paper and making sure that we meet every deadline. Throughout the pandemic, we have been the front line for both the employees as well as our residents and business owners. We are the unofficial switchboard for both municipalities, especially during the time when the courts were closed. With many of our employees working from home, the calls were forwarded, but the capacity of answering calls was limited, so many callers would call back into the clerk's office. We continue handling many calls, answering as much as we can to assist the departments who are working, in some cases, 50% of the staff in the office. The pandemic allowed us to initiate our main objective for 2020, which was to automate permits and licenses. After our successful trial with seamless docs, we never looked back. Martha has taken the initiative. Martha is the deputy clerk and who has taken on the initiative and created forms allowing people to enter their information and pay online. We have done over 215 marriages licenses this way. We have done over, that doesn't get counted that way. We also have many licenses and forms that we do at the village, and many of those have been done via seamless docs and online. We understand we need to give people the option to pay by mail or to come in or to pay online, but all that work is being done online, and then all they have to do is come in and pay if they choose to do that. We will continue to mail out reminders, which will continue to be handled by our part-timer. During the first 2 quarters, we did without a part-timer. The additional workload was handled by Martha and myself, but the pace could not continue we could not continue the pace, and we took to retain the responsible customer service for our residents and business owners and had come to expect. Since we share our office with the finance department right now, all transactions for any department are done on the first floor. Then we see a constant flow of people in and out during the day with little or no downtime, often taking people on while they wait online and accessing our second window in our records room. The ability to move people through the first floor while social distancing is like a dance, and with all team members working together, we accomplish that dance. We understand the logic of moving all services for residents and business owners to the first floor for their convenience and the safety and security of our department teams on the upper floor. As we configure the first floor, I foresee a time when our records room may very well be used by other departments, and moving our records up to the second floor may be needed. That is what we are recommending. Elections all through Westchester County take a great deal of time for the clerk's office, even though they are handled by Westchester County right now. It is not just about election day. It involves the early voting of both the primaries and early voting for the general election too. This year, we were scheduled to have 2 primaries and a general election. Due to the pandemic, we ended up having 1 primary and 1 general election. Major kudos go out to the workers who worked tirelessly for 9 days straight in both the primary and general election. They took on a daunting task, especially during the general election, and showed professional at the height of customer service. This year, because of the pandemic, we will have many new poll workers because the older folks could not do the job during the pandemic. The technology has so improved, but as if with anything else, it had some glitches. The positive attitude of those at the Board of Elections, along with the teams at the polling, helped us make it through the day. There are some changes that we would like to see put into effect and other suggestions we have for the Board of Elections, and we will forward that to the responsible people and hope to be a part of the decision-making process in the future. The other major thing that we have done is last year in 2019, Victoria had started a grant program where we were reevaluating all of our records, and we set up a records room, which has gone absolutely fantastically. We had the opportunity to take our crew from the archiving records to clean out the clerk's office and to make sure everything was filed. We had fallen a little bit behind in the filing in that room. And also we have cleaned up the records room and the map rooms over at the main headquarters. Excuse me, the operations, not the main headquarters, operations center. So as we progress with that grant program, which must be done by the end of December, we are looking to teach all the departments how to archive properly, box their stuff properly, and so that we can have less paper in each office that we walk into. Supervisor's office had the archive team in there for a week or 2, which helped them tremendously to clean up some of the older files that they needed to either get rid of or to archive into boxes. So they're easily accessible. What I find is since we've done that now, it is much easier to find stuff that we're looking for. And this is the first year that everything, including all of our assessors, the clerk is responsible for receiving all of the SCARs and the small claims and the grievances, and they are all archived online now, so they're much easier to access. So we continue doing our jobs in the clerk's office, and we continue to work to make it easier for our residents and our business owners to actually get their licenses, their permits, anything that they need to do. We do have a new package coming out. We want to tell everybody, be patient with your train tag parking permits for the Village of Ossining and your Muni lot for 2021. We have a new package coming out, which we're very excited about, which will make everything online, and it will be done through license plate readers in the future. Such a small tip of what we do.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Sue? Somehow we lost you. Victoria, can you hear
I
me?
think she finished.
She did, but she's muted. No, she's still
Go ahead, Liz.
Oh, okay. Sorry. No, we lost you for a minute there.
Yeah.
Oh, I said any questions, and then it was like crickets.
no, because it went dead. We heard any, and then you just disappeared. I don't know what happened because you weren't muted, and it just
And I
suddenly
didn't
went
touch
dead.
my computer.
Very odd. I couldn't figure out what was
Well,
happening.
when Victoria and I were talking before you all got on, we were free. Every once in a while we froze, right, Victoria?
Yeah, it was strange. So
Very
technical
interesting.
difficulties.
Okay, we don't know why, but thank you for that comprehensive overview of all that you've been up to for the last 9 months, I guess. It's been a long time, and we're greatly appreciative of, again, as I mentioned, you holding down the fort. And I think you mentioned like there was hand sanitizer and masks, and we were dealing with all of that at the very beginning. In addition to the unfortunate death certificates and having to work with all of that, and then some of the happy occasions. So we know that you've been through a lot, and are very appreciative of all of the hard work that you and your team have done, and also just hosting other departments now. As you mentioned, we have somebody from Village Finance in there, and also we've had the assessor's office folks as well as receivers. So thank you again for that, and for working as you had said you would, right from the beginning. I don't know if you expected it all to all happen quite so fast, towards automating as much as you possibly can, and getting away from the paper. I think that that's helpful for everybody, and it certainly makes it easier for people who don't necessarily want to come in and be face to face, and who can more easily take care of their business online. And that's the expectation these days anyway. So we're glad that, very happy that you're moving in that direction and have moved in that direction so quickly. I guess there's some silver linings to the pandemic. So let me just open it up to my board colleagues if they have any questions for our clerk or any statements.
Thank you for all the hard work you're doing. I know you were there all the way through the pandemic. I watched you going out and doing your car hop services. So appreciate that you were there. Appreciate the work that you do. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome, Northern.
Thank you, Sue.
Greg, thank you. Okay.
All right, fantastic. So I think unless you have anything else, we will move on to our next topic, and thanks again for taking the time out this evening, and we're always happy to see you at our meetings, of course. So next up, we have Susie Ross, who is the chair of Green Ossining, which is the town and villages I guess, environmental advocate committee that was formed some years back. And Susie, you've been chairing this this organization, or this committee, I should say, for a number of years now. And you're here tonight to update us or speak to the town board about two initiatives that you've been working on: the Croton 100 Carbon Tracker and the Energy Smart program through Sustainable Westchester. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. I appreciate the opportunity really to get in front of you and have this opportunity to talk about both of these programs. I have to say, I showed the same presentation to the village. There is an ask in this, of course. Well, not of course, but there's an ask in this, and hopefully you'll support it, and I'll get to that at the end. But I am really excited. Can I share my screen? Victoria, I'm okay to do that? All right.
You should be able to.
Let's just see if I could bring this up. Can you see my screen?
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay. Sorry, give me 1 second. I apologize. I lost you all. All right, one more time.
We're here. We see you.
Okay,
Oh,
I see.
There we go.
All right, now you see all that horrible stuff all over. Okay, let's clean that up. There we go. All right, so what I was saying at the beginning was I had presented the same to the village. Green Ossining, and this is an opportunity for me to thank all of you. And to thank, I've been doing this for 10 years now. Green Ossining was launched when Catherine Borgia was the town supervisor, and the town and the village got together. We decided to create a climate action plan, and we did that. It's 10 years old. It probably has to be updated. There's so much new things to talk about and do, but part of the reason that Green Ossining was launched was because all of the ideas that came out of the climate action plan required outreach, and that's how Green Ossining got formed. It basically was formed as an outreach arm to really move forward a lot of the ideas that were in the climate action plan. And we've actually hit a lot of things in the climate action plan, sadly not by design, but just out of things that had been relevant in the community over the last 10 years. So I've been sharing it actually for the climate action is probably 10 years, yeah. And I will tell you that across the county, I think Green Austining is pretty much very envied because of the relationship that we have with both the village and the town. We do a lot of things together, but we also get a lot of support from you. And while not everything we do is through the village and the town, some of the things we work on alone, every time I've ever needed any assistance, any support, both municipalities have always been there. So this is one of those things that that Green Austining is going to pursue. Your support of this would be incredibly meaningful. And it would also speak volumes, I think, to the environmental advocacy and prioritizing environmental issues from a municipal perspective. So my main focus is to talk to you about Cure 100, which will actually be Austining 100, and I will explain all of that, and also talk to you about a program that we're about to be launching separate from this, but it has a lot to do with it. So just a little bit of background. You're still wondering what is Cure 100, and just so you understand, Cure 100 is a consortium. It was founded recently by Croton 100. Our neighbors just north of us have, there's a lot of environmental advocacy that goes on in Croton, but this particular group got together, created a not-for-profit. It is community-based. It is not, they don't necessarily have the same relationship with the municipality that Green Austining does, but they're really focused on reducing carbon emissions. It's the main focus of Croton 100. And what they decided to do was take that model and move it out to communities across Westchester with a carbon tracker. So Cure 100 is actually just an acronym for Communities United to reduce emissions by 100%. And the way to do that is to pair basically community action with data about carbon emissions by zip code. So one of the reasons, I'm sorry, one second. One of the reasons why we had wanted to speak with you this evening is because we will be launching this carbon tracker, but it coincides with a few things. And some of these things, some of you will be familiar with, others perhaps not. But there's three things that are happening right now, which make this a really important time for us to promote and get behind this carbon tracker. One of them is something that some of you, again, may have heard of, the IPCC limit of global warming to 1.5%. If you've not heard of that, the IPCC is the United Nations group that was actually created for the purposes of assessing climate change data. They determined, and this is back in 2018, that if the planet warms anything higher than 1.5% above pre-industrial levels, our world will change very, very drastically, very dramatically. The name of the game right now is really only about adaptation. If we're able to keep the planet from warming below 1.5%, it will make our adaptation less difficult. And in effect, we will suffer less negative impacts on a variety of things: the intensity of our extreme weather events, food security, carbon removal, ecosystems, biodiversity, you name it. Anything within our natural resources will be impacted, but it will just be impacted less. So again, we want to keep carbon emissions down in order to reduce the warming of our planet. Tied into this, in 2019, New York State passed what is known as the CLCPA. It's an acronym not a lot of people know about, but it is actually the most aggressive climate change legislation in perhaps the world, definitely within the United States. And it was designed to challenge, or actually the charge is to cut carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. So 10 years from now, carbon emissions need to be reduced by 40%, and that's versus 1990, and be net zero by 2040. And 2040 is an important number. It will come up in the carbon tracker, but you'll understand why a little bit more in a moment. And by 2040, the whole idea is that the state switches to 100% carbon-free electricity. So Sustainable Westchester is an organization, again, I'm assuming most of you, if not all of you, should know about. We have been really fortunate in Ossining to have taken advantage of at least 2 community rollout programs, but actually 4 if you include the CCA. About 8 years ago, we launched the very first Sustainable Westchester program in Ossining. It was a collaboration just between the village and the town of Ossining, and it was called Energize Ossining. It was all about home energy efficiency. 4 or 5 years ago, we launched Solarize. If Sue's still on the call, I remember that was a program that we worked on together, and we included the village of Briarcliff. And so it was both villages in the town of Ossining, and it was called Solarize Ossining. This next program is called Energy Smart Homes. We are also working with the village of Briarcliff as well. And it is another opportunity for us to work with Sustainable Westchester and all their know-how to help people, residents, reduce their carbon emissions. It will be launched before by year's end. I think I lost my slide there. Go back one slide, sorry. So it will be launched, actually, I believe we're launching this month. Dana has been working very hard on this with me, but not just myself. We've included Andy in it, and I forget Vincent's last name, but he works in the village of Briarcliff Manor as well.
Joe and Andy Tws, right?
Yeah. And so again, we'll be launching it probably at some point this month. There'll be more information on it. Energy Smart Homes is all about reducing, again, moving homes toward electricity, because that is the most carbon-free source of and renewable energy. So the idea, again, is to reduce our fossil fuel use, because reducing fossil fuel use will reduce carbon emissions, getting us to hopefully reach and not go past the 1.5 degree in global warming. Just a bit about this particular effort, and Dana and I have talked about this. What we're hoping to do. We've got a very we haven't completely finalized the plan, but we'll probably have 3 to 4 Zoom sessions with the community. This would just replicate what we would normally do if we were able to be face-to-face with people in the library and a variety of other settings. But the idea is we'd have an evening or an afternoon or a morning or whatever, where we would probably have a 1-hour-long meeting. Each of the municipal leaders would have an opportunity to talk about the importance of this program to our individual communities. We'd hear from Sustainable Westchester, and then we will be hearing from each one of the contractors for a short period of time. And then effectively, depending on which contractor you may want to talk to, we could have Zoom rooms set up. Green Ossining is at the farmers market every Saturday. We also, with the food scraps program, and we could use that as an opportunity to talk to people and provide any materials that we might want to provide, to give out to the community. And we could probably use Cedar Lane as a backup as well, giving another outlet for outreach. We'll probably end up recording the sessions so that people can see them if they can't see them live. And, things like office hours, we'll work on those types of things. So again, it's not in stone how we're going to roll the program out, but it is coming. And so that kind of brings me back to the point of the meeting tonight, which is if we really are to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, it is going to require rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented changes in all aspects of our society, the way that we live, the way that we use energy. So I'm showing you Croton 100's page. Croton 100 again is behind, the brains behind this carbon tracker. They just launched a couple of months ago. It might be a little bit longer than that, but you can see from their website that they've done a really good job of providing opportunities for people to learn about what is going on with the organization. And we'll have a similar page to that. So again, the idea is to do carbon reductions, but the whole point behind Cure 100 and Croton 100, which for Ossining will be Ossining 100, is to reduce our emissions by 5% every year from 2030 to 2040. So in effect, we will be reducing 5% per year, which would bring us to zero emissions by 2040. And that would keep us in line with the IPCC's recommendation of keeping our global emissions down, our planet warming by 1.5 degrees. Again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, what this program is pairing data by zip code with information that is relevant on an individual household level. I've got some figures up here. This is data that's pairing with zip code 10562, since the town of Ossining also includes 91% of the village of Briarcliff Manor. I was able to get data on each of the individual, on 10562, on 10510, and then on the combined. And I'll be showing you the combined just to give you a sense of it. So the important thing here is that what this carbon tracker does, and this carbon tracker is not for municipal use, it's for individual household usage. The whole thing behind this is that there are many people out there that want to participate in making our planet greener and living a more sustainable life. But without the tools and without data, it's very hard to understand how you might be able to change. And the beauty of this carbon tracker is an individual household fills out a very simple questionnaire, and they're able to, and by virtue of the questions that they're asked, they're able to ascertain how their individual household is emitting carbons, and most importantly, what they can do to reduce it. So it literally gives suggestions. So it gives quantification of community-wide emissions, household emissions, individual emissions, and emissions by sectors and pillars, meaning transportation, food, heating, electricity, and it also gives a sense of the carbon reductions. So I've kind of talked to you a little about the carbon tracker. I want to show you what it is. But again, the whole idea is really to just provide accurate information on a household level so that households are informed about ways in which they can make changes. So for us, basically what we would do is we would have a page just like this. It will say Ossining 100. And I invite any one of you to, you could actually go to croton100.org now and go to the carbon tracker and fill out this form. Dana did it. Dana, you could talk about your experience in a moment, but the preparation here that they give you is basically what you need. It should take, I think, how long did it take you to do? You're on mute.
I think about 40 minutes or so, something around there.
And you followed the instructions here, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, more or less.
Your Con Ed bill.
Never followed. Yes. No, I did. Yeah,
You did. You followed the instructions.
Yeah.
So there's a basic set of instructions. It should take somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 45 minutes. Even though it's not Ossining 100 at this point, you can go in there right now and fill it out and get a sense of what it is. And again, 40, 45 minutes, grab a cup of tea or an adult beverage if you'd like, and you can get on your way with it.
I did send them some questions too, and they got right back to me with answers, or responses, I should say.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it's a very responsive team, and they're very keen on getting people on board. So the questionnaire is pretty simple. These are the sectors that I was talking about. You've got transportation, heating, electricity. This is just a glimpse. I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is transportation. And again, it's really down to the individual household level, your usage of a variety of different things that they can gauge carbon emissions on. And so they'll ask you for your gas mileage, the kind of car you have, things of that nature. And at the end, you should be getting a sense of, after answering these questions, what your transportation carbon usage is and how that compares to the region. And then again, you'll see that there are, these pillars. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but it'll give you a sense of what your score would look like. And again, the personalization and the customization of all of this to your particular household is really what makes this powerful. So let's just take a look at overall town of Ossining, which would include that 91% of Briarcliff Manor. I'm teasing you a little bit with this information because I will tell you that a lot of the numbers for 10562 plus 10510 are very high. This is going to sound terrible, but 10510 is what we in the environmental world would probably consider carbon slobs. And part of that comes with the household usage, the size, and all of that. So I'm not describing anyone in particular. I'm just saying as a village, it actually outweighs a lot of what 10562 does in a general term.
Excuse me, I just want to say, like, 10510 also, I believe most of North State Road is 10510. So there is, there's business district in there too. I know there is also in 10562, but
yeah.
Just saying.
But these are, so this does not, and thank you for, actually, that's a point I wanted to make. When we talk about things like transportation, we're not talking about transportation, by the way, that comes off of corridors. And we know that one of the worst greenhouse gas emissions and the carbon emissions comes from transportation, which we personally have no control over because of the corridors. These are all household related figures. So the population, and these are close to, I suppose, the 2010 census numbers, but for the population for both combined, there's about 40,000 people. There's about 13,000 households. There's about 1,700,000 people per square mile. A variety of other figures. The last three bullet points are the important ones here. Not that the others are not interesting, but the last three are important. The annual greenhouse gas emission per household in the combined zip codes is 53.1 tons. That is, the average is about 20. So that is incredibly high. Actually, the average is, the household is about 40. So this is quite significant in terms of how much higher it is. If you look at it per person, it's 18.5 tons. It is not only high for Westchester, it is high for the United States. And the United States, I think, is at about 16 or 17 tons per person per year. The greenhouse gas emissions per day community-wide is just, obviously it's just an averaged out number, but 2,000 tons of carbon dioxide is pretty high. So most of that comes from transportation. Transportation is the largest piece of the pie. Again, this is individual households added up. 233,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year comes from transportation. There are things we can do about that, electric cars or downsizing SUVs, things of that nature. Followed by heating and gas, and gas for cooking, and then electricity. There are a couple of things in here, goods and services and zip code overhead, which are just averaged out. We don't have specific data on zip code. But again, I'm just trying to give you a sense of the variety of different sectors that are in here. And so if you look at annual household emissions, again, transportation, heating and gas, and electricity are really the largest portions of this. And if you look at 10510 and 10562, there are slight differences in them. So The other part about the carbon tracker is not just knowing how you do individually by your home, but it's the recommendations that are given to you to make those step downs. Because if you go back to one of the slides that I had shown you, the idea is to reduce our carbon emissions individually by 5%. So I'm going to get through these slides very quickly because I could spend another half hour going through all the various different things. But here, for example, is the transportation one for individual households. So part of it too is do your children ride the school bus? And I actually have had conversations with the school district on the school buses. So that's something we could talk about later. But the idea here is, for example, this household may have a big SUV, and if they step down to a different types of cars, they will reduce their carbon footprint. Airline flights add into transportation as well, taking a variety of different step downs in your choices would help get to that 5%. Here's a big one with heating. And heat pumps is actually part of the program that we're going to be talking about, natural gas and heat pumps, and that is actually part of the Energy Smart Homes initiative that we'll be rolling out soon. Electricity. So again, it gives you a sense of how you could step down. This has to do with waste, which we're already addressing with our food scraps program, and we'll be able to do more with that. And it even comes down to diet choices. And again, this is not to make people feel bad. It's just to say, if you want to make a change, these are options that you can do to take advantage of, making your carbon footprint a little less, a little more significant, or a little less significant, if you want to look at it that way. So they've launched a couple of months ago. Bedford is on board with creating a chapter. Yorktown 100 launched their chapter. They are licensing this carbon tracker to a couple of organizations with support from Sustainable Westchester and NYSERDA. Green Austening's intent is not to make green austening go away. The Austening 100 will be a chapter of it. So if you went to our website, for example, we'd have a tab that says Austening 100, and we would have a similar look to the website that I showed you before for Croton 100. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it, and I'd love for questions. I would say that my ask here is it would be wonderful if the town could support this with a resolution. And part of the reason I'm asking for this is, again, I think it sends an important message to the community that these types of initiatives and this effort in particular is very important. And part of it in that resolution is recognition for the IPCC 1.5 degree number that we're trying to not exceed, as well as the CLCPA, because that is a statewide goal, and the state will again be, they're already offering up like solar farms and working through NYSERDA for all of that. And so it sends, again, an important message that you're supporting not only the United Nations goal, but the state goals as well in supporting this program.
Well, that's fantastic. We so appreciate all your work with green austening, and this is I think this is a great new initiative to really help people understand at the individual level, where they're tracking the highest and and giving lots of suggestions. That was one of the things that, it does give you immediate suggestions as to how you could make a difference. I think everybody needs to participate in this. It's not like pointing fingers and waiting for somebody else to do it. Each of us have to take responsibility for the changes that are happening in our environment and how we can participate in stopping the clock on climate change. And hopefully, I don't know that we can reverse it, but we can hopefully just maintain it at lower levels than would be anticipated if we keep going at our same rate. So again, thanks to Green Austening. We particularly appreciate the help with the food scraps rollout. I think that's been really great. Other initiatives that we've taken on is installing electric vehicle charging stations within the last couple of years in 3 of our town parks. We also have one at the DPW building. We've started trying to transition our fleet. We don't have much of a fleet, but the fleet that we do have, we've moved to hybrid electric or plug-in hybrid or full electric. We're just went out, put up for a mini bid with, finally got on the state bid contract for our senior van, which we're hoping to be the first senior bus, which is hoping to be the first fully electric bus, mini bus in the area. I don't know if it's the state or just the county, but if we can ever bring that to fruition, that would be a great coup. And we're hoping to meet with a charging station company in the not too distant future with the village to look at places in low moderate income areas where we can add more charging stations. One of the things that we found we did the ribbon cutting at the Earth Day Festival, which of course we were so sad to miss this year, for one of our charging stations, the one at Engle Park. At that particular charging station, actually, there's a video up on our Town Bosnian YouTube page. I ran into a guy, I think it was right after the Earth Day Festival, who was charging his plug-in hybrid there. And he said, I actually bought my car because of this charging station here. So the idea that we can actually drive demand for this type of change from the municipal level and from the choices that we make as a municipality, I think is really important. That's just one of the areas that we're working on doing that. And so many of the other, focusing our comprehensive plan on sustainability, with like a sort of an understanding how important it is that as we move forward with any sort of development, that we take into account the environment and all the protections that we can put in place, so we can thoughtfully develop as a community moving forward and protect our precious assets, our tree inventory that we've done town-wide. There's so many things that we've done. We've partnered with you on the leaf blower legislation. Plastic bags have, been something that we've worked on together, even though we didn't adopt that legislation ourselves, because we knew that the county and the state were sort of right there. And we felt like that might be more effective than piecemeal communities adopting that legislation. Just so many different things. And you've been such a great partner, Susie, and Green Austin's been such a great partner for us with all of these different initiatives. So I think this is just another thing to add, is having the ability to use this carbon tracker. So with my rambling, I will now, and also the Energy Smart, just to be clear, one of the first pieces of the program, as soon as we, learned that we were one of the communities that was selected, Sustainable Westchester reached right out to us and said, okay, we need to pick contractors now. So I actually asked Andy Teese if he would take that on. Susie was already part of that. And then Vinny, the, I think, assistant building inspector who's an engineer in Village of Briarcliff. They've all been part of the vetting of the contractors, along with Pelham, who's also another heat smart / energy smart community. And also CCA, we've been participating in CCA, which is again, driving demand for clean energy, clean and renewable energy, by having a community choice aggregation, a program where we're all banding together with other communities in Westchester to purchase electricity supply. So again, thank you. I'd like to just open it up to my board colleagues for questions for Susie about the carbon tracker, questions about the Energy Smart program, and Susie's proposed plans for launching it and outreach to the community. Questions from the board?
So are we going to have, or could we have some sort of measuring thing, be it one of those thermometers or whatever else, seeing how much people who have participated have lowered the carbon in our community to kind of motivate other people? Like have one of those big, hey, we've limited this much, this much, this much. I think
Yes,
that
great
might
idea.
be motivating.
Yeah.
For some people.
Yeah.
I really appreciate all the hard work you do always. I think this sounds like a great program, and something that an average homeowner who maybe not taking the time to look into all the different ways that they can make a personal difference, this might be a really great tool for them to understand that, just this small change makes this much of a difference. And, maybe I can add that to my personal number or, help my community reach an even better number. So I think it sounds like a great program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's a good idea too. We probably won't know that. I mean, again, it's going to be stepped down every every year. We're hoping for the 5%. And I don't know. I'm not sure like when we would do all of that. There's a lot of little pieces that we have to figure out, but keeping it out there with things like that and letting people know that we are tracking this is very important.
We
I
have
also
benchmark.
sorry. I just want to throw out there that we also are participating with the county in the Climate Action Planning Institute. I think is that what it's called, Susie? It's a grant that the county received through the DEC, which is actually going to be focused on our government operations, greenhouse gas emissions, and sort of like a collaboration amongst municipalities. I know Susie's also representing the county in that, so that's going to be exciting to see that data come as part of this as well.
Right, and we have already been benchmarking as part of climate smart communities, clean energy.
Clean energy communities.
Clean energy communities. There's so many acronyms, I can't remember which one. So, and they all sound a lot alike. So anyway, yeah, clean energy communities. We did start benchmarking, and we started a little bit of an in-house green task force, I guess, or a green staff task force to look at our different departments and how they can do a better job at saving energy. So we continue to work in that direction with our various departments. How about Councilman Wiltshire, Councilman Meyer? Do you have any questions for Susie about the carbon tracker, Cure 100, Croton 100, Energy Smart, or any of the above, or anything else?
Not at this time. I don't have any questions.
No questions on my end either, but sounds like great program. So thank you.
Great. So, I think what we would hope to do then is put a resolution up for our next legislative session, supporting Cure 100 and supporting Austin 100 being a part of Cure 100, so that we could then have access to the carbon tracker. Is that right, Susie? Is that what your
That'd be great.
ask is? I think. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll send you
Template resolution.
yeah, I'll send you wording around some of the things that would be great if you could integrate them in. And I think one of the main things behind this is not just the support of the carbon tracker and our Cure 100 chapter, but it is also a testament to the acknowledgement of the 1.5 degree Celsius and the CLCPA, which all New Yorkers should be really proud about if you're at all interested in the environment. And again, an opportunity to just say thank you, because again, having been around not just within Westchester communities, but outside of Westchester, we have a very unique relationship, but I also think that both the town and the village have been incredibly proactive with environmental sustainability and environmental issues. And I'm really proud to live here. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Susie. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a great night.
You too.
And speaking of, before you sign off, Susie, next up we have EcoG. You can go, but I just want to let you know.
Oh, I'm not going to go. I'll be in the background.
Okay, great. I just want to let you know that a few months back, EcoG Energy came before this board to introduce their proposed solar canopy development at Maryknoll Fathers and Brothers at 75 Ryder Road. Following their introductory presentations before the board, the town board referred the application to the planning board. The planning board has now completed their site plan review and has referred the complete plans back to the town board for formal approval. There are still a few outstanding questions before we hold a public hearing on the necessary approvals, so we've asked EcoG back to present to the town board at this work session so that we can have a little bit of discussion before holding a public hearing. We've also invited our town planner, Valerie Monastra, here from Nelson Pope Voorhees to weigh in. And Council Adana or Valerie, do you have anything to add to kick off our discussion with EcoG?
Can I just clarify something that you had said? The planning board hasn't finished its site plan review. It finished its seeker review.
Okay.
Which is the environmental review that has to be undertaken before any involved agency, which is an agency that has any discretionary decision-making authority, which includes this board with the zoning, has to be completed. And so the planning board, I believe it was October 20th or around there, issued a negative declaration finding that the project does not have the potential for any significant adverse environmental impacts, which ends that process and allows it to come back to this board to start the decision-making process. As part of that, the planning board did also issue a recommendation on the zoning, which Valerie can speak to, which is also required as part of the code. So both of those items have been done, and so that's why we're back here.
Okay, and I think it has something to do with those fire trucks, I want to say, and the height of the canopies. Is that what we're talking about mostly, and maybe some?
Well, sure. Why don't I just I'll just summarize the planning board recommendation. So first of all, the planning board did recommend that the town board grant the applicant's requested zoning text change, which is the floating zone. And they are also recommending that the town board also grant the applicant's requested zoning text change, which is to increase the maximum height from 15 feet to allow for a canopy that is placed exclusively over existing impervious surfaces surfaces without vegetation that are used as parking lots. However, one of the things that they are recommending is that the maximum height be limited to 23 feet instead of the applicant's proposed 25 feet. And that the board further recommends that the town consider imposing additional robust screening requirements for such canopy applications within the 15 to 23 foot range. Mostly because while this particular application is set back on, in the property on existing parking lots, their concern is that if this gets applied, or these canopy systems gets applied, for example, to another property that is more visible from public right-of-ways, that there's additional robust screening that gets applied.
And that's part of the reason also why we didn't go forward with having the board consider a resolution to schedule a public hearing yet, because this recommendation by the planning board with respect to the more robust screening is something that's new, that in the prior discussions this board has had about this application hadn't really been considered. And if the board does want to include additional zoning text amendments to address that, that's something that's going to have to be looked at and drafted, and we would want to do that before we schedule any public hearing.
Okay. So I believe that one of the reasons that the height of the canopy had to be raised initially was to address the accessibility of fire trucks. Is that true?
That's correct, but the accessibility issue really comes with the lower height from, which is, I believe is, actually, Julia, can you, because I don't recall off the top of my head, what is the minimum height that you're proposing at this point on the canopy?
Oh, 17.
Yeah.
Yes.
You?
Good evening, everyone. I first
Julia.
you did such a great introduction. I don't need to emphasize why this project is important or, does good for the world. I think Susie did a great job, so I wanted to thank her for that. I think she gave a great intro to why we're doing the work that we do. And yes, to that point, the reason the canopies are so tall on the high end is actually because the lower end of the canopy needed to be raised over, I believe the minimum was 13 feet, 9 inches for fire department vehicles.
Right.
It needed to be taller than that, which then makes the high end close to 22 feet.
Right, and I believe your canopy systems are going to be about 14 feet on the lower end and 22
Correct.
feet on the higher end. So, and that's the fire department issue is really the 14 feet as opposed to the 23 or 25 feet.
Got it. Okay. So we understand then that the reason is because that's the general size of these solar panels. They're not like size to order or something like that, and they need to be a certain size to be able to maximize the kilowatts or megawatts that they produce.
Right. So the reason the canopies are tilted at the angle at which they are tilted is to improve the production from the system. they are sort of standard size. So they're, 4 modules in a row at a certain angle that results in that height. And yes, that is correct that the low end is the 14 feet. That was where we needed the clearance.
So in terms of just a follow-up question is about the screening, since that's the other recommendation from the board. And I know that it says robust screening. And we did get a letter from our neighbors in Newcastle with a concern that, certain view sheds, they might be able to see the solar canopies. And I know, non-canopy systems tend to be often or can be lower, can be on the ground or whatever, so they don't have the same sorts of issues. My question is, what happens if you have to have this robust screening in terms of, not being able to have sun on the solar panels?
Right. So I think the intent of the the planning board is really so from public right of ways or, in public viewpoints, that you have just additional screening as opposed to what, right now there's no major requirements for screening. It just says, they do recommend screening. I mean, it's part of the application process that they have to identify screening, but what they're really interested in is really trying to make sure that these particular canopy systems are screened as much as possible, clearly not to interfere with their overall production or the workings of the canopy systems, but just so that if for some reason that you have another system that is a little bit closer that could be visible from public areas, that we have additional screening. And it's really up to the town board as to how we want to address that. I mean, that's something that, ultimately the planning board can just continue to deal with. I think their concern was that if we are raising the heights, that maybe the town board might want to consider some additional screening or additional provisions specifically dealing with the canopy systems.
I'll just put it out to the rest of the board. Do you guys have any thoughts on this matter?
So I don't know. I feel like I might want it on a case by case basis because, I mean, in my mind, we could put this over all of our parking lots, and many of them have no ability to screen, even if we,
Right.
So I don't know that I want a requirement for a robust screen. I kind of want to imagine it on a case by case basis. That's just, my thought. And the other thing is, do they all have to be that high if there's another access for a fire truck or emergency vehicles to get to the building? Like if a fire truck can go around it and didn't have to go underneath it, then would it have to be that high?
So that's a good point, and I think they both go to the same issue, which is that, excuse me, planning board's going to be looking at every single one of these on a case-by-case basis, just like you were saying during site plan review. And just because the code, should the board decide to approve the amendment, would allow 23 feet, the planning board, I think, would certainly, and Valerie, feel free to chime in, be within its right to assess whether 23 feet is necessary under those circumstances. So just because it's allowed, doesn't necessarily mean that people will always go to the maximum height that they're allowed to do, just like they don't with any other type of structure. And that it will be looked at on an individual basis. Same thing with landscaping. So it is something that the board could leave the discretion of the planning board in conducting their site plan review. And if you wanted to throw something extra in there, in the amendment to the code, specifically referencing that, you would want the board to take special look at certain situations, such as the planning board recommended, if it's over 15 feet between the 15 and 23, that would be easy enough to do. It's really, if the board wanted to come up with its own special landscaping requirements in that situation, that would be a little bit more difficult, especially to do on a global level.
I agree. I don't think we should do it globally. I think we should do it case by case basis and leave it to the discretion of the planning board. And if we want to put in a maximum height not to exceed, okay. I mean, again, it seems to me like there might be a situation that we don't know of or can't think of where that they might have to exceed that height. So Right now, it seems okay for this particular installation proposal, but I don't know what the next one's going to look like or where it's going to be proposed for and what makes the most sense.
And just at that point, you know, when the board enacted this, 15 feet was kind of the recommendation, and that seemed sufficient. And now we have our first applicant coming in.
Right.
The point is being made that there's a reason to make it higher. So you're
Right.
absolutely right.
I will just note that the current regulations for the solar energy systems does require that the applicant take a look at the visual impacts and at times do a visual analysis as part of the application approval process. In this particular case, because the applicant already demonstrated that where the location of the canopy systems is not going to have any visual impact on any sort of public roadways, they didn't have to go through the full visual analysis, but that is part of the overall application process.
Okay. Was it just from public roadways that you couldn't see it, or is it from the neighboring?
All visual impacts are usually done from public roadways as opposed to individual private properties. So it's either public roadways, public parks, anywhere where the public can access versus private properties.
I see. Okay.
But either way, the amount of where those lots are located, the neighboring properties will not, I don't believe we'll be seeing those as well, because it's already, they're far from the roadway. And then if you recall, the topography itself drops down, and then the entire property is, bordered with vegetation.
Right.
Well, Valerie, also while the visual analysis may be done generally from public areas, just as part of any site plan review, if there's, the potential that it's going to have visual impacts, and any sort of project, I'm not saying specifically this one, on neighboring properties, is something that would be within the planning board's purview to look at as
That's correct.
plan application and special permit application too, which they would also need for this type of project.
That's correct.
Anybody else? Councilman Meyer, Councilman Welcher, do you have any thoughts about the limits or what we might want to see in an amendment to the solar law?
I don't know. I think it has to go case by case.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you need 20 foot here, you might need 30 someplace else. I think it has to go by. I don't think you can just put it, everybody's 15 feet.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think we want to encourage this, so making it case by case could do more to encourage more of this than a flat number.
So again, I think what we're suggesting is that we increase the maximum from 15 feet to, is it 23 feet is the recommendation from the, so that at least right now we're saying we know that at least in this particular instance, if you do a canopy system, 23 feet makes sense with our fire trucks and the angle of the solar panels and the average, maybe the average size of a solar canopy system, solar panel, that it would go up to 23 or 22 feet, but so we're maximum at 23 feet for now. And then that seems to be like sort of the lowest and highest that we need to go, right? Highest at the bottom and then lowest at the top that we would need to go to make it make sense. And then the other part of it is the screening piece of it, which is allowing the screening to be again more something that the planning board would make a recommendation, but we would want it to have effective screening. I mean, the way that it's written right now, from what you're reminding us, Valerie, is that there is a consideration for there to be screening already. So, I don't know if the word robust needs to go in there or if it's sufficient. What's in there right now to allow the planning board the leeway to make recommendation that's specific to make sense for the particular property and the particular type of installation. Do either one of you guys want to comment on that, just to bring us back to where, what you think you're hearing from us and how that might manifest itself in the next step?
Right. So I'll just start that I do think that there's definitely the planning board has the authority and the ability to make sure that the vegetation is appropriate for and the visual impacts are dealt with as part of any application process. I do think that the proposed up to 23 feet, I think would work for not only this application, but also future applications. So I think that also is a recommendation worth considering.
I mean, maybe we make, say, with a maximum of 23 feet, and then is there something that we can build in to say unless or until such and such, blah, 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 becomes, obsolete, and then the next size solar panel has to be a little bit bigger?
I mean, I would say once you start getting above 23 feet, right? So now you're talking about, it is something that's, pretty substantial in height. So if you were to go up to 30 feet, 36 feet, you might want to start considering additional criteria on where they're located or, right? So, because I think really the key is to make sure that emergency access vehicles can access the site.
Right, and then it doesn't look like a high rise in the middle of nowhere, right? Those are kind of what we're looking at.
And truthfully, the 14 feet is what gets the emergency. So for some reason, the solar panels need to start at 15 feet or 16 feet at some point because of the heights of the emergency vehicles. The tilting can be slightly different, and maybe, and at that point, if there needs to be a variance, the applicant can come in and go to the zoning board of appeals.
Okay.
That's another good point by Valerie, is that the reason why the board is considering a zoning text amendment in this instance is because this could have a more widespread application to other projects because of the rationale for having the change. But because with these bulk requirements, there is always the alternative possibility that an applicant can go to the zoning board and seek a variance. The other thing is that for the board to keep in mind, and as you know, the other thing you're considering besides the zoning text amendments is the application of this property to the floating zone so that the actual use can be permitted. So anytime someone wants to do a tier 3 solar energy system, they're coming to this board anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at all of these things concurrently. You're looking at the floating zone and you're looking at the zoning text amendments that are being considered. So it's not like it's always going to be an extra step in the process, because we're all learning as these things are coming in and the applications are being considered. So given that there is always going to be the board's involvement to the extent that the floating zone is required, if other things need to be tweaked along the line as we're learning more, it's not the end of the world.
In that vein, I have one more question that doesn't pertain to either of these two topics, which is from the planning board. But because we have EcoG here, this is a community solar project. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And is there a way for us to build in any sort of provision for there to be a first right of first refusal to go to our local community first, or is that already part of what your plan is? I mean, I have to believe some of it would be going to Maryknoll, right? As part of the plan?
Yes. So that is the plan originally, is to have some of the credits be allocated to Maryknoll as a user. But the remainder of the credits, I mean, we would prefer to have them go to, businesses and residents in the local community.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot say that we have anything built in explicitly in terms of a right of first refusal, but in terms of where we're going to focus our marketing and subscription efforts, it certainly would start in Ossining. And then if we were unable to fill it from Ossining local to out to other areas of Westchester.
The reason that I'm asking is because I think that Mount Kisco just recently did something like that, and I'm not sure if it was their actual on their property or if it was someplace else, but I do believe that they had built into their contract that the developer would offer it first to the local community before they went then out, and I just wanted to see if that was something that we could somehow figure out. And then the other question that was brought up recently was if you have a way to offer it to low mod income households also, if that's something else that, you know, that you have like a percentage that's dedicated to.
So that is an option with community solar projects. I don't believe that we had planned to designate this particular project as, you know, designated for low and moderate income households. However, with, you know, Ecogy doing a series of community solar projects throughout Westchester, that is certainly something that we may designate future projects for. I can't say that it will specifically be the Maryknoll project, but would we have community solar subscriptions open to low and moderate income? Potentially, yes.
Right, or you can like even set aside, you know, whatever a specific percentage that we're dedicated to. I don't exactly know how that would work, but targeted, you know, targeted to communities that might not otherwise have the option. Obviously, one of the benefits of community solar is that people who couldn't put a rooftop installation on can still buy, you know, sort of buy into the supply. Can you just explain it a little bit for just to remind everybody how community solar works, just really briefly, Julia?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. So the way the community solar credits work is as a subscriber with a regular Con Edison electricity bill, anyone can subscribe to receive credits from any community solar system within their service territory. So, you know, while it is nice to say if you live in Ossining, you are subscribed to the one that is closest to you, the way the credits work really does not distinguish between how close you are to the system. So as long as you're within Con Edison territory, you're able to sign up for any of the community solar systems we have. And then the subscribers get credits from our generation allocated to their account. And they receive those credits, they receive all of the value of those credits, but only pay for 90% of that value. So you're actually guaranteed a 10% discount on any of the credits that are being received by any of the subscribers while getting 100% of the value subscribed to the system. And actually, I did want to point out, we have recently started a partnership with Sustainable Westchester in order to fully subscribe all of our systems. And that does include, I believe, marketing to some portion of LMI customers for one of the projects that we will be coming into operation soon in Cronin-Hudson. I do believe we had somewhere between like 15, maybe 17% were LMI customers that were actually able to subscribe there. So that is basically how the system works. And with, you know, Ecogy having multiple projects across the Westchester area, we are growing our subscriber base for community solar subscriptions. So if, you know, not everyone is able to subscribe to the Maryknoll project, we will certainly happily subscribe them to the next one.
Gotcha. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so do we all have a sense of where we're moving on this or not? Do you guys understand board general consensus on where we want to be or not? Do you need some other direction?
So I'll just chime in with what I think I've heard, and you are certainly welcome to correct me. The board generally seems to be comfortable with the 23-foot ceiling as far as the height goes for the text amendments, and deferral to the planning board in terms of what that should look like for screening and visual impacts on any specific project. Valerie and I can take a look at the code and see if there's a word or two tweak or additions we can make to make that clearer. But I think we're all with the understanding that the planning board is certainly within their right to do that currently as part of any site plan review, and that the board is also ready to move forward with holding a public hearing on those zoning text amendments, as well as applying the floating zone to the applicant's property. And so if the board is so inclined, we can put on a resolution for consideration at your meeting on a Tuesday to schedule the public hearing for, I believe, November 24th.
I would say you summed it up very, very well. Would everybody agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, both of these items that you're considering, the zoning text amendments and the application of the floating zone, are local laws. So that's why you're holding the public hearing, and they'll have to be done by local law like you do any of the others or what we're going to be considering next week. So.
Okay, fantastic. I think it's a really exciting project. I think one of the things that we, love about Ecogy is that you are going on to, covering already impervious surfaces instead of having to chop down lots of trees. And that's one of the things that I think, right from the get-go was very appealing to this board as really the first tier 3 installation in the town. So it's exciting. There's lots of community benefits. And we're, I think, cautiously optimistic that the public will agree with us on this, and that will be the case that we will hear at the public hearing. So looking forward to moving forward as much as possible in a very near future, okay? Not too distant future.
Great, thank you. So if I'm understanding correctly, we will be participating in the meeting on Tuesday.
No. The board is going to consider a resolution on Tuesday to call for a public hearing to be held on the local laws on November 24th. So November 24th, Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
And would this board like them to do, are we just doing a public hearing, or do you want to do any sort of presentation, have them do a presentation at all at the
I think, sure, we can have them do a short presentation. That seems nice.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Julie.
Okie dokie. So next up, really, thank you so much, you guys. We'll see you on November 24th. Okay, next up, Valerie has been hard at work for a few months doing research.
Wow.
Well, model legislation. Maybe she hasn't been hard at work for doing all this research for these many months, but for battery energy storage systems. Similar to legislation the town board adopted in relation to our solar energy systems, this model legislation will provide a process by which developers can apply for the construction of battery energy storage systems. This would allow the town to get ahead of these sorts of requests and tailor the process to our needs. To a certain extent, but I'm going to turn it over to Valerie so she can walk us through a draft local law for the town board to discuss on these this next interesting topic. Another way that we can start looking and helping reduce our need for the larger grid and looking more closely at how we can make other types of energy available locally.
Great, thank you. So I'll just start off. So I know the board received a draft local law this afternoon. This is really just the beginning of the process. What I wanted to do is just approach the board as to the general thought on this particular local law, how the suggestions on how we would apply this local law. And then I would like then to go, if the board is comfortable with the overall process that I am outlining in this particular local law, then we can go internal to the various town staff to get their feedback on the local law itself, because for sure you're going to want fire department, definitely building department, as well as probably, department of your highway department to also weigh in on these this local law. So I'll just start off with just the fact that for the public out there, this local law is really dealing with the battery energy storage system. These are systems that basically consist of electrochemical storage batteries. They have the ability to actually are capable of storing energy in order to supply electrical energy later on in a time period where you need to either take a system off the grid, or maybe there's an overload in the system. And so then this also supplies additional electricity onto the system. Typically the battery energy storage system, the local law itself is based upon NYSERDA's model law. They've done a lot of research in this particular, these systems. And I also looked at the town of Yorktown and how they ended up developing their local law. And they did a lot of research prior to the development of their local law, which was also based off the NYSERDA model law. For the town of Ossining, the system is going to be the local law and the process to apply for the battery energy storage systems are going to be very similar to the solar energy systems law. I thought this would be helpful because we already had this process set up, and because it is a very similar type of system where it's really focused on renewable energies and green infrastructure, that it would be wise to also continue the same process. I'm recommending that we allow for these systems to be applied in the same zoning districts as the solar energy systems. And while the solar energy systems law has 3 tiers, this one is only going to have 2 tiers. The 2 tiers are tier 1 battery energy storage system, which is 600 kilowatts or less. This is a very small energy system, so those systems themselves would not necessarily require site plan approvals. A lot of them would be involved in just making sure that they can go right to building permit, and that they just have to meet the setbacks underneath the underlying zoning. One caveat I am suggesting we do that, similar to what the town of Yorktown did, is that they have specific criteria for single family and 2-family homes. Those battery energy storage systems have to be at maximum somewhere between 40 kilowatts within a utility closet to 80 kilowatts in an attached or detached garage, or exterior walls or outdoors on the ground. So these systems would be much smaller systems, and a lot of times they would be associated. These would be also standalone systems as opposed to associated with like some of the solar panels that you would see. Like, so for example, Club Fit has a battery energy storage system associated with the solar panels. So those would still be wrapped up into the overall solar system. And that's one thing that we can, we'll make sure I'll work with Christiana to make sure that those are not necessarily, we're not causing an applicant to have to go for this permit process as well as the solar energy system process. The second tier is anything above 600 kilowatts. And the reason why this particular, I didn't have a third tier, is because that once you start getting above 600 kilowatts, you really do need to make sure that you have the same safety measures and same parameters and same plans and same technical documentation for much larger systems as well. And so because of that, because the documentation and the review is the same, I'm suggesting that, we keep with the tier 2, so the 2 tiers as proposed by NYSERDA. The application process would be very similar to the tier 3 in the solar energy systems. So tier 3, so a tier 2 battery energy storage system would require, again, approval from the town board. It would be a floating zone process, and it would be on 4 acres. Most likely because, while 600 kilowatt hour system might be relatively small compared to some of these larger systems that you see, I believe that most systems that will come in will be looking for much larger than 600 kilowatt hours. And because of that, I think it makes it most sense to still keep within the parameters of the tier 3 energy, the solar energy storage systems law, which actually requires a minimum of 4 acres. In the actual, for the tier 2, similar to the solar energy storage system, it does require the applicant to submit many of the same items. Some of the differences really deal with fire safety compliance plans, operation and maintenance manuals, as well as emergency operations plans, mostly because these are battery systems, and it's really making sure that the property in which these systems are located, as well as neighboring properties, are protected in case there is a fire. It will require a site plan approval, a site plan application, and a conditional use permit similar to the tier 3 system. And it will require, as I said, permit system through the town board for the floating zone application for these tier 2 systems. So go ahead.
Just to clarify, these larger tier 2 systems are generally within like a concrete structure or something like that. Like it's like a garage or a storage facility or something like.
Yes, and they're usually surrounded by, they recommend about a 7-foot fence, and they do recommend that the vegetation around at least 10 feet. I believe that's what we're proposing in here, but there's at least a minimum of 10 feet of space between the storage system and the vegetation because of potential fire hazards. Also, you have to make sure you have appropriate emergency access. Not that you don't need to have these types of access, you know, and these measures taken into consideration for solar systems, but these are, you know, a lot of them are lithium batteries. They are a little bit more, if there is a fire, you know, I think that's a little bit more, the level of, I guess, emergency could increase to a larger extent. I mean, I believe, you know, in speaking with NYSERDA, they do say that the new systems are very safe. So I don't want anybody to get concerned that, you know, that's, we're suggesting to put something in that's very combustible. It's just the fact that you do need to have these these precautions in place in case there is a situation that does occur.
Okay. You still have more, right? Are you done or not?
No, so that's pretty much the, you know, the basis of this. You know, the NYSERDA model law does not have the floating zone, but I do think I'm suggesting that the town board considers the floating zone similar to what you're doing for the solar energy systems.
Right. I mean, I think that the idea of that is nice because you can say, well, we don't want, you know, 5 of these here, or we only want these we only want 5 of them here and that's it, you know, and sort of cut it off that way. The other thing that I was just wanted you to talk about a little bit is that there's also a decommissioning requirement.
Yes,
So
there
that
is.
end of its useful life, or even if the property is sold, something like that, if the property is sold, that the new owner has to agree to all the same terms, I think, that are in the original. And then the other part of it is that they have to decommission it, and they have to leave money in a bond, basically.
That's correct. And I basically took the verbatim language that was already in the solar energy systems, you know, and including the security deposits, as well as the decommissioning plan, as well as the transfer of property to a new property owner. So I made sure that those were also consistent as well, so that there's no, you know, double standards, or the fact that, you know, it's basically one process, except I am recommending these as 2 separate sections in your zoning code, mostly because of the fact that there are additional items that are required as part of the battery energy storage systems. And I think it was just going to get a little bit too complicated trying to work these additional requirements and regulations into the solar energy system section.
For what it's worth, I completely agree with that.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll just open it up to the board for questions, comments, thoughts.
I think it sounds great. I'm happy about having the same floating zone tier 3 town board say in where it goes. I think that's important so that we have control over where development goes in our town. So I think you did a lot of great work, and I think it sounds like a great draft. So thank you.
You're welcome.
It also gives you the option of opening it up to more areas than you may have considered otherwise, you know, more zoning districts, because they will have to come back to the board anytime. So it does give you a little bit more flexibility and possibly some more options if the board determines that a specific property is suitable.
They are a lot smaller. It's not like you know, they don't take up a lot of space, more closet-like size. I mean, shed.
Well, I think
Right.
I think it depends. There is an application before the planning board right now, and that those particular battery energy storage systems will be 60 feet long, 15 feet wide, and 10 feet high.
Got it.
So that one is a more substantial, and that one, just for the town's board's knowledge, is 15,000 kilowatt hours. Right. So I'm suggesting anything above 600. And the reason, and that's why I really do believe that, and I work in a couple other communities, and we're seeing these systems come in, and they're not coming in at 600 kilowatt hours.
Right.
So I do think we should be prepared that when they do come in, they are going to be put on probably larger properties, and they're going to be a little bit more substantial systems, which I think then benefits the town by being able to decide which properties would be best suited for these types of systems.
Similar to my question with Ecogy, I wonder if there's any way that we can look at potential benefits to the town or town residents with these battery energy storage systems like that. You know, again, you know, some percentage of it would need to be accessible too. I don't really know the ins and outs of that, but maybe we could get some guidance either from NYSERDA or from, Sustainable Westchester or somebody like that to see if there's some benefit that could, be built into any local law that says a percentage of could come back to the community. I don't know. I'm just kind of tossing it out there. And also, I just want to mention that if in fact, I do believe that there are same sorts of benefits, tax benefits that accrue to these based on state law. I think we also want to look at a payment in lieu of tax structure similar to what we had put in place for tier 3 systems that are produce over 1 megawatt, I think, of solar. That's next up, I think, to make sure that we can, if possible, find a pilot that makes sense for those types of installations.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Feldman, did you also have something you wanted to add?
Not right now.
Okay. Valerie?
So I think then the next step would be, I'm going to circulate this, like I said, to, Pete, John, Dan Sarasia, and then, yes, Christy. So.
Oh, no, I said Paul for you.
Oh, I thought you said law. So yes, but also Christy, Paul, and, but to get their feedback, thoughts on it, and then we'll come back to the town board to talk a little bit about maybe moving to the next steps of a public hearing at that point.
Okay, and do we have to ask the fire department if they need special equipment to deal with these type of issues and see what that would cost and maybe build some of that in?
Sure. And right now, I can tell you that the current application that's before the planning board of the system, and just so that the board understands that right now, technically the zoning code allows for utilities to be placed in, I think, almost most of your zoning districts. So this is right now the application that's before the planning board is a permissible use. It's actually they're proposing to locate it on St. Augustine's property. And so it does fall in to a larger extent, the parameters that we're proposing here would fall, that application that's before the planning board now would fall under those parameters, including, while we don't have a battery energy storage law, we are asking the applicant to provide all the, necessary plans and documentation as if the law is in existence. So I just wanted to give you that a little bit of that background information. So the fire department is already involved they've received the plans for that particular application as well as the building department. So we'll get back to you on any additional information that the fire department has on these.
And just to Councilwoman Feldman's point also, as this process moves forward, since it seems like the board is inclined to take it to the next step, if the board is going to consider adopting a local law, as the only involved agency, you will have to do SECRA. So that'll involve, looking at all of those potential environmental issues that could come up, including related to municipal services like the fire department. So those are all interested agencies, not involved because you're the only one that would be making a decision on it, but all potential agencies that, could be affected or whose input you would want from this type of local law, including the planning board, if you wanted to refer it to them, that you could do that during the secret process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Welcher, Councilman Meyer.
No comment at this time.
Okay.
No, sounds good.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Valerie, can I just ask one question about the St. Augustine? Have they appeared before the planning board yet?
They have.
How long ago?
They just appeared the first time, so I guess like last month in October.
Okay.
But also, there is a provision in here that mentions something about if there's something already, right? When would it would kick in?
Yeah, so that's something that I think we're going to need to talk about as well. And I highlighted that provision, and I will be talking to Christy a little bit more about how that would apply, and then especially with the current application before the planning board.
All right. Fantastic. Sounds great. Thank you for all the hard work that you've been doing on these many, many, many months. And we look forward to the next step in this process.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you. And so with that, I will ask if I could have a motion to adjourn to executive session for personnel, advice of counsel, and contracts.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? I didn't think so. Oh, you're opposed? Thanks so much for joining us on this off-schedule night. We will be back to our regularly scheduled legislative session next Tuesday, November 10th via Zoom. We also have a work session scheduled this week and next for the town board to review the 2021 tentative budget with our department heads. Members of the public are welcome to join the Zoom sessions to view the meetings in progress if they would like. Zoom access information is available on the town's website, townofossining.com. Also, we learned this week that Governor Cuomo has once again extended the executive order, allowing for town board meetings to be conducted via Zoom. We intend on continuing with this format of meetings for as long as it seems appropriate. So with that, have a great night, everyone, and we will see you back on Zoom soon. Bye-bye.